When Imran Khan became Prime Minister, he promised Naya Pakistan. The country was overwhelmed with the promise. 4 years later, Imran Khan is the first Prime Minister of the country who's been ousted from power, and the Naya Pakistan dream in every sense has sunk to the bottom of the Arabian Sea, inundated by the ravages of nature and mismanagement of its political class. Pakistan today is debt-trapped, blacked out, and a sinking ship.
Bankrupt Pakistan is now literally powerless. Pakistan has shut down its markets, malls and wedding halls. Why? To save money.
Filling cooking gas in balloons. People in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are resorting to dangerous and desperate measures. For the cash-strapped nation with no natural supply to homes, an unprecedented economic crisis looms, facing free fall in essential items and expensive energy imports. In a recent announcement, the Pakistan government has now ordered malls and markets to close by 8:30 p.m. Wedding halls to shut by 10 p.m. Sharif government has also ordered all government departments to reduce electricity consumption by 30%. Half of the street lights across the country will remain on alternate days. Nightmare for summers, as even production of energy in efficient bulbs and fans will be banned from February.
भर में मौजूद तमाम शादी हाल जो हैं 10 बजे जो है वो बंद हो जाएंगे इंशाल्लाह। मार्केटें जो है वो 8:30 बजे जो है वो बंद हो जाएंगी। इस पॉलिसी से इस शादी हाल, रेस्टोरेंट्स और मार्केटों के ये अगर टाइम ऑब्जर्व हों तो 62 अरब रुपए की बचत होगी।
But in Lahore and Karachi, two big cities, traders refused to comply and have revolted, saying their businesses would be ruined.
बात यह है कि जब आपने हमसे तजावीज़ ले ली तो फिर आपने हमसे कहा कि ये मैं वज़ीर आज़म साहब के पास रखूंगा, वफाकी काबीना में ले जाऊंगा, उधर से फिर हम आपके साथ दोबारा मुशावरत करेंगे। लेकिन उन्होंने ऐसा नहीं किया और आज खुद से ऐलान कर दिया है कि ताजरों की मुशावरत से किया है।
8 बजे से लेके 10 बजे तक ही काम होता है, उसके अलावा सारे दिन तो काम होता ही नहीं है। यही थोड़ा सा टाइम होता है जो बंद करने पे आ गए, लेकिन हम नहीं करेंगे अल्लाह के हुक्म से बंद।
Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves barely cover a month's worth of imports, most of which are accounted for by energy purchases from abroad, with funds expected under an IMF program having been delayed. Pakistan's total liquid foreign exchange reserves stood at $11.7 billion to $5.8 billion with the central bank as of last month, having fallen 50% in 2022. Pakistan struggles to quell default fears in domestic and international markets, with $1.1 billion IMF bailout tranche stuck and delayed. Inflation being forecast to stay high between 21 to 23% in 2023. Recent floods caused economic losses of over $30 billion and the country's debt has jumped to a record high of 60 trillion Pakistani rupees. Pakistan owes 30% of foreign debt to China. This means political slavery to dictatorial communist regime. Having already rented off diplomatic properties to fill coffers, the situation is only going from bad to worse. Bureau Report, India Today.
These measures were not exactly arbitrary. Rather, the Shehbaz Sharif government, since coming to power in April 2022, has been struggling to keep the ship from sinking completely. There were more such desperate measures to save Pakistan spiraling out of control, like what happened with Sri Lanka last year. The country's balance sheet is in an abysmal condition, with debts piling up, and it would take generations to pay it off. Here's a report.
Pakistan's economy slowed in 2019 and contracted in 2020. as did for most other countries due to global pandemic. Though growth resumed in 2021, it nearly got paralyzed with mounting debt burden and political instability in 2022. When Imran Khan became Prime Minister in 2018, he promised jobs, new housing and economic reforms. But tensions between India and Pakistan remained high. Political and social instability hinder economic development. Textiles and apparel account for most export earnings of Pakistan, but much of its economy is informal, and underemployment remains high. China pledged more than $60 billion in infrastructure and energy investments in China-Pakistan economic corridor projects, but it suffered significant setbacks and has drawn criticism. Pakistan's exchange reserves have declined by $6.7 billion, and its biggest ally, China, started to reduce its investment in the country. Pakistan today struggles to quell default fears in domestic and international markets. With a $1.1 billion IMF bailout tranche stuck due to differences, which otherwise should have been completed last November, it's staring at a possible bankruptcy. The food crisis has also deepened in the country. Food inflation quickened 35.5% year-on-year, while transport prices rose 41.2% in December 2022. Such is the extent of the crisis that the government auctioned a Pakistani embassy property in the US a few days ago. The 2022 monsoon flood increased Pakistan's dependence on imported goods other than oil, while the country's exports slumped. According to the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, the country's trade deficit stood at over $2.8 billion in December 2022, as exports declined by over 16% to $2.3 billion. A depreciating currency isn't helping the economic situation either. Pakistani rupee fell by nearly 30% in 2022, compared to the US dollar. A Reuters report stated that Pakistan has to meet external financing needs to the tune of over $30 billion up until June 2023, including energy and debt repayments. By all counts, that's an impossible feat considering the country's sluggish GDP growth. The World Bank has pegged it at just 2%. Pakistan is also facing skyrocketing inflation that could rise up to 23% in the current financial year. Slower growth and rising inflation could prove to be a dangerous combination for the nation, as getting a job would be harder and harder for its population. The World Bank, in its annual debt report published recently, estimated that Pakistan's total external debt was at $130.433 billion by 2021. The country has to pay $33 billion debts by 2023. Steve Hank, professor of applied economics at Johns Hopkins University, in a tweet on 14th October last year said, Pakistan was on the brink of a debt default. Its sovereign bonds, he said, lost more than 60% of their value in 2022. China is Pakistan's largest bilateral creditor, with outstanding loans of $14.5 billion. Only the Asian Development Bank at $14 billion and the World Bank at $18.1 billion have comparable amounts owed to them. Pakistan also owes $8.77 billion to commercial banks, which includes banks from West Asia and 3 Chinese lenders: the Bank of China, ICBC and China Development Bank. All 3 of them are state-owned banks. Between 2016-17 to 2020-21, the 3 Chinese lenders extended short-term loans worth $11.48 billion. It is not clear how much of this amount is still outstanding. Pakistan pays a higher rate of interest to China and its banks compared to ADB and World Bank. while the loans from the latter to international financial organizations are for 25 to 30 years and have been made at much lower rates. Chinese commercial banks are for shorter tenures of 1 to 3 years and at higher interest rates. This difference also extends to bilateral lending. Compared to other bilateral lenders, China's loan tenures are shorter and interest rates higher. Bilateral loans from Germany, Japan and France charge interest of under 1%, while for the same loans, China charges interest rates at 3 to 3.5%. Pakistan's economic crisis can be simply told as a compound fallout of mounting debt, inflated energy import costs, dwindling forex reserves, global inflation, political instability, and a sustained drop in GDP growth. For the Shehbaz Sharif government, it is now a race against time to prevent the nation from a complete economic collapse. Else, nearly 230 million Pakistani could severely suffer for generations to come.
The current economic and energy crisis of Pakistan is in fact a crisis waiting to happen for a long time. What the cornered Shehbaz Sharif government in January 2023 is a result of the cumulative effect of all that happened in the 365 days of 2022 in Pakistan. Power-hungry politicians of Pakistan played a cat-and-mouse game of overtaking the reign of command of the country while the country was going bankrupt. Result? The word crisis has become a new normal for its people. Here's a report looking back at how the crisis is now synonymous with Pakistan.
The words crisis and Pakistan became increasingly synonymous in 2022. It was the year of crisis as floods inundated the country, leaving millions homeless in an environmental crisis. The country's economy was in near paralysis from debt and inflation, and those who are supposed to find the remedy, the politicians, were fighting a bloody battle that wasn't restricted to its parliament but spilled over to the streets of the country. PTI chief Imran Khan's rule has been dotted with controversy since day one. While some allege that he was a puppet of the Pakistani army, others blamed him for being a stooge of his overly spiritual wife. In March, Pakistan's opposition united under the second generation of the political stalwart families of Bhuttos and Sharif and called for Imran to resign.
शहबाज शरीफ साहब ने बड़ा सही और स्टेटमेंट स्पिरिट में चैलेंज दिया है वजीर आजम साहब को कि वो इस्तीफा दे.
The former cricket star turned Prime Minister, elected in 2018, was cornered due to the economic crisis and an increasing fallout with the country's powerful military. Imran Khan, after being selected, was rejected.
किसी आजाद मुल्क के लिए जिस तरह की हमें मैसेज आई है, ये है तो प्राइम मिनिस्टर के खिलाफ ही सिर्फ, लेकिन ये हमारी कौम के खिलाफ है.
After accusing the West of conspiring to oust him from power because he paid a visit to his Russian counterpart during the Ukraine war, Imran Khan tried to dissolve the parliament and seek fresh elections.
मुझे लोगों ने किसी ने कहा जी वो इमरान खान आप रिजाइन कर दें. मैं कभी हार जिंदगी में नहीं मानी. मैं तो वोट का जो भी रिजल्ट हो जाए आप देखेंगे कि मैं तो उसके बाद और ज्यादा तकड़ा होकर सामने आऊंगा जो भी रिजल्ट हो.
But the united opposition won the game and Imran became the first prime minister in the country's history to lose a no confidence vote.
पाकिस्तान के मफाद को भूल गए, पाकिस्तान की जो आप महंगाई की बात करते थे उसको भूल गए, रुपए और डॉलर की जो इक्विटी है उसको भूल गए. ये वो इमरान खान है जब अपनी जात की बात आती है तो हर चीज को वो कुर्बान करने के लिए तैयार होता है.
Imran Khan's exit from power opened a new, uncertain and volatile phase in Pakistan politics. Led by PMLN, the 13-party PDM coalition that assumed power on 11th April got off to a slow and unsure start. It had to initially overcome impediments in the way of a smooth transition. Cobbling together the largest coalition cabinet in the country's history took time, and underlined the difficulties of forging agreement among disparate parties. Nevertheless, Khan's fierce opposition kept this coalition united. He took to social media and then to the streets to campaign and rally his supporters.
पैमरा कहता है कि जनाब इमरान खान की लाइव तकरीर नहीं हो सकती। क्या जुर्म किया इमरान खान ने? जुर्म ये किया है, सिर्फ जुर्म एक है कि वो कभी चोरों के टोले को तस्लीम नहीं करेगा। ये जुर्म है उसका।
Ceaseless political confrontation signaled the breakdown of politics in 2022. Political rivals either resorted to the courts or turned to the army to further their political aims. The army in turn was accused of not intervening or intervening too much by both the media and the public. Before retiring, the Pakistan Army chief debunked Imran Khan's claims of foreign conspiracy to oust him.
फौज की क़यादत के पास इस नामुनासिब जलगा का जवाब देने के लिए बहुत से मौक़े और वसाइल मौजूद थे, लेकिन फौज ने मुल्क के वसीतर मफाद में हौसले का मुजाहरा किया और कोई भी मनफी बयान देने से इज्तनाब किया। इसलिए पिछले साल फरवरी में फौज ने बड़ी सोच और विचार के बाद फैसला किया कि आइंदा फौज किसी सियासी मामले में मुदाखलत नहीं करेगी।
Imran Khan, on the other hand, was shot in the shin during his anti-government protest in November. His convoy came under attack in the east of the country. He and his aide came. It was a plot to assassinate him.
This all played to that script. All I want is a proper investigation into this. Now, the proper investigation cannot take place with these chiefs on top.
In the middle of all this, Nawaz Sharif is set to end his self-exile and return to Pakistan to add fresh ammunition to the ongoing political war. Deepening polarization and political turmoil exacerbated the economic challenge and uncertainty, casting a long shadow over a worsening public finance crisis. The dire situation earned Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to secure resumption of the IMF program and seek funds from friendly countries to finance the record current account deficit, meet debt repayments and try to stabilize the precarious macroeconomic situation. Soaring inflation emerged as an even bigger political threat than Imran Khan.
2022 तो हम तो ये कह सकते हैं कि बड़ी मुश्किलों से, बड़ी मुद्दों से गुजरा है कि जिस तरह के यहाँ की जो गरीब आवाम है वो बिल्कुल पिस रही है। हुक्मरान जो है वो अपने में लगे हुए हैं, आवाम का कुछ सोच नहीं रहे।
The people of Pakistan were hit hard by the climate catastrophe in the monsoon session of 2022. Heavy rains and glacial runoff combined to submerge large swaths of Pakistan's south. The floods displaced millions of people and destroyed agricultural livelihoods, causing as much as $40 billion in damage that Pakistan could not afford. In the weeks after, Pakistani leaders pleaded for international assistance and led developing countries at the United Nations Climate Change Summit in a call for loss and damage funding for those on the front lines of the climate crisis. And the new year brings no new hope for Pakistan.
Now, Pakistan, which nurtured the Tehreek-e-Taliban to use it as a proxy force in Afghanistan and India, is now getting a taste of its own medicine. TTP is targeting the civilians and the security forces as it grapples with the economic crisis. Here's a report.
Snakes in the backyard sting Pakistan. After economic crisis, Islamabad faces security challenges. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan's return to acts of terror, extortion and hostage-taking is turning the clock back for Pakistan by a decade. On 2nd January, there was an angry exchange of words, indicative of how placing Taliban in power in Kabul has gone wrong for those at the wheel in Pakistan. Pakistan's Interior Minister Rana Sanaullah spoke about attacking Tehreek-e-Taliban hideouts in Afghanistan. In reaction, Ahmad Yasir, a Taliban leader, put out an image of Pakistan's defeat at India's hands in 1971, warning Islamabad of a repeat if Pakistan attacks Afghanistan. Pakistan Defence Minister has alleged that Afghanistan's soil is being used by armed groups to launch attacks. triggering a sharp response from the Taliban government to call the charge incorrect. The Tehreek-e-Taliban has issued threats to the Shehbaz Sharif government, accusing it working for the Americans. It has asked PM Shehbaz Sharif and Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto to review their policy against them. Ever since the Taliban got a hold on Afghanistan, Pakistan has witnessed a sharp rise in terrorism incidents. TTP was involved in 2007 assassination of Benazir Bhutto, 2009 attack on Pakistan Army headquarters, 2008 bombing Marriott Hotel in Islamabad, 2012 attack on Nobel laureate Malaya Yousafzai, 2014 attack on Peshawar school. Pakistan, which nurtured the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan to use it as proxy force in Afghanistan and India, is now getting a taste of its own medicine. Bureau Report, India Today.
Being our next door neighbor, the last thing India wants is another debt-trapped, crumbling economy with political doom written all over the country. Pakistan's leadership needs to work miracles to stop it from disintegrating completely and sinking to the bottom. It's time to wrap up this edition of the Inside Story.